right, so the degree program is 2/3 to 3/4 technical, 1/3 to 1/4 design. And when we say design in game design, we mean a couple of different things. There's obviously the visual design and animation and graphics piece, right?
Right.
When we say game design, we're talking more about the stuff that's the actual soul of the game. Really, the graphics, the animation, the technology are all in service of the rules and the gameplay and
The story.
and if there is a story, right? Some games have it, some games don't. So game design is about what's the game, right? Part of that is, of course, about what's the art style, what's the animation style. Part of that is about what's the hardware it's going to run on. But in an ideal world, when we start designing a game, we start saying, what's the player experience? What's the fun we want them to have? What's the experience we want them to get playing the game? What do they go through? Is there a story? And if so, what is the story? And then after that, that's when we start talking about, okay, what's the art style? What's the animation style? What's the hardware performance we need out of the boxes? What can we run this on? What kind of interaction system do we want? Is it traditional controller? Is it Kinect? Is it something else, right? All of those types of things. So what I teach is that piece.
What sort of tools do you use, or what tools are out there to do that?
All right, well, game design, that kind of game design I just spoke about, that's pencil and paper first, right? Sketching out the ideas, like as any good engineer does, right? Maybe you start with a board layout package, but as likely as not, you're starting with pencil and paper and doing your block diagram, right? So a game designer does the block diagram for the game, right? Does that make sense? A game out there called Cloud, which is about creating and manipulating clouds. Okay, right? So it starts with the idea of I want to play with clouds. Okay, so what do you do with that? How do you make it interesting? You're not going to be killing people with clouds, right? This is not a game where we're shooting people. So what does it mean that I want the game to be out of clouds? Okay, how do I want someone to interact with that? What's their goal? Are they supposed to build something better out of clouds than somebody else is? Okay, how are they going to do that? Well, it'd be nice if they could do it with their hands rather than a traditional controller, but maybe I don't have the budget for that, or maybe the market for that isn't right? So what do I do next? How do I get that level of interaction in there? Do I need real physics in my clouds or not? How do I need to render my clouds, right? Am I going to do this in a 2D cartoon style look? Do I really want someone to have the experience of doing taffy pulling and having real 3D, right? All of this stuff is the essence and the soul of game design. Now, of course, there are commercial constraints. Well, game design and games in general have aspects of an art form. They're also, in general, pretty commercial, right? So we have all those drivers of who's going to pay for it, who's the audience we're trying to sell it to, what hardware we're going to run it on, where's the target market, what do they generally pay for when they pay for a game, what do they buy when they buy a game, what kind of game system is more pervasive amongst that group, right? All that stuff will come into the process. And some of us who are interested in game design primarily wish the process were as pure as I've just described. It's not always that pure. It can't be in a commercial environment. And if it's going to be on an iPhone, and 4 to 6 to 8 guys can program it, and it can be 2D or 3D, and it's going to be mainly a one-person or a two-person thing, okay, then I have a lot of freedom to do whatever I want. If it's a large player, let's let's build a game out of Lord of the Rings. Well, now I need hundreds of people and tens of millions of dollars, and I have much more constraint in terms of how experimental I'm going to be, how much I have to meet my demographics, so on and so forth. He's kind of in service of that top Google, right? So, while the fact that Autodesk may have a new piece of software that does things faster, better. I mean, everybody's stuff is faster, better than it was last year, right? In an ideal world, you don't see that and you say, I'm going to build this game because that piece of software is now available, right? And you say, here's the kind of game I want to build. Now can I find the stuff that I want? Do I have to build the stuff that I want? Right? You know, there are all these other pieces of the puzzle.
If you decide that you want to do something that costs more, is there a clear path to going to VCs or angel investors? Or I mean,
it's interesting in that up until the past 5-6 years, the computer game business started as hobbyists selling each other stuff on floppy disks, plastic bags. You know, that's how it started. And it was a garage business. As the hardware got bigger, better, faster, meaner, as the ability to be a startup, a freelancer, went away. I've been teaching this stuff for about 10 years. And in the late 90s and the early 2000s, there was little or no chance to be an independent startup. Right? You had to go work for one of the big companies, pitch your idea inside. If you had X bazillion years in the industry, maybe you could spin out. I've got 8 shipped titles, you know, and find 5 guys that you work with and build the core of the company and get that investment. But the stuff we see now has reinvigorated the industry to allow the small startup, the small garage back in the game. Kona's Crate. That's an iPhone game and a web game. It's done by a bunch of our graduates who have a company. The guys who started Darkwind Media always wanted to do games, but they had built a 3D modeling animation system around biology and medical. So they started their company with that. They did web design and stuff as a way to fund that product's development and then eventually game development, right? So that's one way in which students are starting off. They start a company that market general technical expertise of one kind or another, get the projects to build the money to do the games you really want to do, right? The other ones will go straight and give that iPhone game a shot, right? They'll do the entrepreneur thing, they'll buy the 2-year supply of Kraft macaroni and cheese, move back in with mom and dad, and try to make that happen. There are plenty of kids, for example, Ben over here, and Steve, the tall African-American kid who's sitting right there. They're some of my most accomplished guys. They've been through the bachelor's and the master's with us, and it's their dream to do their own thing eventually. And right now, they're debating, which way should we go? Should we go ahead and get that first gig with a real company, quote unquote, get the couple years under our belt, really understand more about what it takes to make a commercial shipping game, and then go off on our own? Or should we just go for it and go off on our own? Now, RIT is a co-op university. So our students, co-op university is a school in which kids have to go get full-time paid internships before they can get their degrees. So my students, undergraduate, have to have 3 blocks of co-op, 350-hour chunks of full-time paid work. Then have all their courses done, have straight A's. If they don't have their 3 co-op blocks, they don't get their piece of paper. So they already have some experience. And Steve and Ben actually did 1 co-op with a group of faculty, myself included, who self-funded a a game startup directly aimed at doing console games.
Really?
Unfortunately, we did it 6 months before the bottom fell out of the stock market, so our ability to go beyond that first prototype went up in smoke.
Yeah.
But they've had the opportunity actually to work for real companies and watch a startup try and bump into obstacles. So they can now figure out what they want to do.